So I heard Monica threatened this guy for possibly giving food to Nathan. Nathan basically stands outside Lifeboat just hawking meth, really obvious style, really honestly selling meth. And uh, I'd seen him doing it like about, I don't know, maybe last Wednesday or so, last Thursday. And so anyway, Monica goes to Nathan's friend, hey, if you give him any food, you're going to be kicked out too. And it was just like, oh yeah, okay, Monica sounds like Ozark. Like, she has to act like that in order to keep her job at Lifeboat. And when I run into Nathan, I'll give him like snacks because I usually have snacks on me. And he's honestly so good looking. He's this really beautiful 25-year-old kid who everybody says has bad karma. And he's openly admitted when he gives meth to someone I care about. And okay, so he's not allowed at Lifeboat, but his main problem is he's really obvious and open and transparent about selling meth, whereas all the other people that sell meth or use drugs or fentanyl. Oh, and like, check this out. The toilets at the 12th Street bathrooms in Astoria are so full of needles and tinfoil. The the old mayor's son was like, yeah, everybody's smoking fentanyl in the men's room at 12th Street bathrooms, okay? So why can't Astoria have some bathrooms that don't have fentanyl being smoked in them? Like, maybe they can have separate facilities, like the non-smoking bathroom. And nobody wants to be a bathroom attendant, but sounds like the facilities are getting messed up due to the paraphernalia. And I was thinking to make a film called Bury the Hatchet, Ozark. So when I reported Ozark for saying, do you want to suck on these blue balls, ladies? When he's doing his like sexual innuendo about male genitalia to homeless women who are coming in after being assaulted by homeless men. They're having to eat in the same cavern, like basement, small little storage room that passes for a lunchroom at Lifeboat services with people that have punched out their tooth, that are actively verbally abusing them, calling them the C word, calling them all kinds of horrendous things. Then Ozark wants to come down and make sexual jokes. Locker room talk is what many people say. I had more than 10 people confirming locker room talk or the specific like one-hit wonder dirty joke blue balls that Ozark evidently repeats so much that like ginormous amounts of people will confirm that he jokes about that. And that's basically very disgusting, very creepy. And that isn't even the beginning of it. I recently got, complete confirmation that he was a meth dealer, and that's why he was traveling with guns when Officer McNary arrested him on a burglary. And even if one made the case that, oh yeah, he was a criminal, but now he's reformed, the fact is that his discriminatory and harassing treatment of the people that he's claiming to serve is indicative of his inability to abide by any best practices and treat people with basic human dignity. So Erin Carlson isn't all up on that yet. I tried to like look her up and basically found out I'm older than her, and she puts on a really good front of like doing this like I'm this professional businesswoman type attitude or whatever, but I think frankly like this is a very naive operation to disregard the ADA, to actively and openly discriminate, to preference predators over abuse survivors, and then completely disregard the safety of the Beacon Clubhouse participants, putting them in contact with all kinds of drug fumes and drug sales, and then have numerous violent predators in the house, on the block, and then say like when Quentin assaulted Dwayne Blair, who went on to stab Sam at the shelter, why wasn't Quentin's behavior looked at seriously as a threat? Oh, when Quentin assaulted Obie Babs, why wasn't that looked at seriously as a threat? And I feel that I'm not Dwayne Blair's defense team, I've written them, but I'm concerned that Dwayne Blair's crisis was worsened by Quentin's physical abuse and bullying. physically abusing the disabled and the elderly at Lifeboat is tolerated and protected and pushed under the rug by Ozark Iraq and Aaron Carlson. And they are actively hurting the homeless when they exacerbate the tensions that are leading to further mental breakdown. For instance, I had written about Social Security fraud. I believe it is fraudulent to lure a bunch of people with Social Security checks and then have drug dealers actively preying on them or panhandlers actively preying on them. And none of my concerns were taken seriously. Kirk Wintermute came at me hitting. He smiled at me twice recently. Maybe because he's starting to mature and realize he shouldn't have been so derogatory and dismissive of me. That possibly I was right in some regard, or that his rush to judge, or even his personal cult of personality for Ozark Iraq. I will say Ozark Iraq is charismatic. He's Year of the Dragon. He's a Capricorn. He's super hardworking. He has a lot of great qualities. So when I come to Aaron and I'm like, hey, you know, this sexual innuendo around the homeless and constantly kicking people out from meals, the homeless actually call it the Hunger Games. And numerous people report food poisoning. If you report food poisoning or sexual assault, you lose your meal privileges. So he's using meals to convey his omerta, like his code of silence regarding his tyrannical interpretation of filling empty bellies. I spoke to Corey Buck about it. She's like, oh, okay, I'll look into it. I spoke to the head of CBH about it. Why is Gigi discriminated against from performing her job function anywhere near Ozark? Oh, because she used to hang with Ozark's nephew, who knows where the disabled woman's dog is when Ozark stole a dog, who maybe knows a lot about his drug and burglary, criminal felon history, gun running, whatever the heck. Gigi was on the shelter board. Ozark goes into the shelter as it's in disarray and everybody's fighting and says, if Gigi's on the board, I'm not going to be involved. So it's like Lifeboat or Gigi. You have to choose. Gigi is a beautiful Pacific Islander woman with an incredible gift for kindness and humanity and compassion. And Ozark can't stand people that have skills that outshine his. He's extremely competitive. Like Teresa said of the shelter, the homeless services community in Astoria is like a Game of Thrones. I asked my friend who watches that stuff, and he's like, yeah, everybody's willing to basically kill each other to get ahead. And that rife atmosphere, I talked to the Astoria Co-op. I was like, okay, so Ozark discriminates against giving the foods that you donate to people that don't participate in his culture of silence around abuse. So will you support an organization that doesn't discriminate, that isn't hostile to women or hostile to survivors? They're kind of like, oh, we don't know anything. And then, is it dirty looks? I mean, I was told, well, I never really liked them. Or no, that's the opposite of what it's supposed to be. Yeah, that's filling empty bellies was supposed to be, no one is excluded. It was supposed to be for the very hard to reach communities, but Ozark has used exclusions preemptively and punitively to trample on people's safety, thereby driving them out of town. That is why I view it as being a dirty cop. He's effectively pushing people out of town. His complete disregard for the Americans with Disabilities Act, inherent in the architecture, is a failure to make any service which is wheelchair safe. The staircase is prohibitive and dangerous for anybody with any kind of mobility problem. And indeed, people have been pushed down in violence. I've broken up fights down in the lunchroom. Well, Astoria can do better. And this is the new tablet that this affordability connective, whatever was it called, affordable connectivity federal program is passing out tablets. So this is a test run of the camera. I want better for the homeless. It's just, it's kind of pathetic that the city of Astoria and CCA are so desperate that they're allowing this tyrannical and abusive atmosphere to go on because they have nothing better going on. And yeah, the monopolistic tendencies of Lifeboat to kick out anyone who criticizes, anyone who has any suggestions, anyone who has any constructive insight. I believe that in a sense it is a fraud, because say Ozark gets all these donations from all these clothing companies, all these food companies, and then he picks and chooses who he gives those to. He's effectively stealing from the very poor, pocketing a salary, which this was never a salaried job. This was a volunteer gig until recently. This is a volunteer gig from people who really cared. And then he's going to pocket a salary, pocket all this swag, deny the low-income people the swag that he's raking in, and then have a monopolistic control over it. It's abhorrent to me that that theft of the generosity of the community is going on under the name of a nonprofit, under the rubric of a nonprofit, and everything you assume a nonprofit is, something kind, something compassionate. But unfortunately, some of us are so cynical that we hear nonprofit and we think grifter, we think scammer, we think burglar. And so Ozark's, character assassination and me, false, like, defamatory things he's trying to allege. I was like, how can you even have a convoluted brain that twisted that you're going to accuse me of fake stuff because you've got a dirty mind and your brain is always going that way? Like, it was insane. I go to Erin Carlson and I was like, I don't even know what he's talking about. And she's like, I know you're not like that. And I'm like, yeah, you have a baby with him. That's fine. That baby's adorable. But, like, raking in all these vulnerable people to be treated shabby, or to be bullied, or to be beaten up, to be financially ripped off, or to face all this discriminatory allocation of resources, or to face bullying for reporting abuse, that really tarnishes Erin Carlson's name. I really hope she rises out of this and finds a way to distinguish herself. I think some people don't have faith in her. Some people just think she's as crooked as all get out. But I thought more of her before all of this, and I really admired, I was really sucked into their propaganda. I was like, oh, well, you're helping the homeless. Let's try to put a good face on this. And then once I saw, I was like, immediately knew Ozark wasn't good with human relations. I was like, oh my God, this guy was losing his temper like every 30 seconds and running around like a little tea kettle whizzing, like mad at everybody. And I was like, oh, that's where he needs some help. He needs someone who is good at the front of the house, like customer relations. And he needs someone who's more diplomatic and doesn't lose his temper and is cool all the time. And so me, liking conflict negotiation, jumping in the middle of fights and de-escalating the worst mental crisis at his facility seemed to me a natural role to slip into. I think in some ways he's maybe even jealous. Like, yeah, he can show up and cook gross non-vegan food every day, but like, there's more to life than just putting a plate of food in someone's face, saying, no food for you. I think the kindness and the compassion and the humanity that should be shown to the homeless is what they need even more than food. And I think a lot of the problems in this city would resolve once that kindness and compassion were shown equitably and fairly, without discrimination and without personal prejudice, without gender discrimination, disability discrimination, and the types of discrimination Lifeboat practices. And I think Kirk Wintermute, if he is even still on the board after becoming a judge, needs to get real with shaping a better way forward, and they need to stop slapping down whistleblowers and silencing whistleblowers in dissent.